All right, y'all. Welcome back into the Rotoballer PGA show. Coming to you on a Tuesday night tonight, or this week at least. That is my bad. I was kind of in transit for the last couple of days, and so had to push back not just this release, but the release of some of the articles this week. But I am still alive, and we are here as always with Matt. Going to talk through the Cognizant Classic Odds Board first event of the Florida Swing, an event that I've been through the years. I lived in South Florida for about 3 or 4 years, so I was there for the Eckroat win. I was there for the Cole Kirk playoff, and then I went for like a day or two last year when Highsmith ended up winning. But yeah, I think certainly one of the so obviously the start of the Florida Swing, which is a brand new chapter of the PGA Tour season, leaving the West Coast behind, with maybe the biggest surprise thus far of the season. Jacob Bridgman essentially goes wire to wire over the weekend, outduels Rory in the back nine. Rory made a heck of a charge there over the final 9 holes, but eventually succumbed to Bridgman one-shot win. I think 18 under par, final round 72, enough to get it down. Matt, I know we talked pretty extensively about Rory last week. I ended up being on Rory. Had a couple of side bets kind of going at it on Sunday. So how was your viewing experience over the weekend at Riviera?
Yeah, I mean, pretty impressive stuff from Bridgman. Unfortunately, with my card, I was kind of out of it. I didn't end up getting the number I was looking for on Rory. I almost regretted that big time, but um, had a couple guys kind of in the mix after Friday, and then Wyndham Clark sort of ejected pretty early on Saturday. So I was just watching kind of from a enjoyment, viewing perspective. It's impressive stuff from Bridgman. We kind of talked about it on the episode, how we thought it was going to be one of like the big guns that took it home. And he's certainly turning himself into, kind of a bigger name, but I didn't expect someone like that to pull out, a win last weekend. So a lot of credit to him. Very impressive stuff. And yeah, when Rory made that putt on 18, and then Bridgman was a little tentative on that first putt, I was like, oh man, this if he misses this,
Oh
um,
yeah,
this is going to be. I
Jackson
mean, he was
City.
going to be toast, but it was going to be a three-man playoff. So, yeah, pretty exciting stuff. Rory does look like that win's coming pretty soon. I mean, a number I'm sure is going to be horrible, but he's going to be going into Bay Hill with a lot of momentum, and he loves that place. So,
Yeah, Bay Hill and Sawgrass coming up obviously the next couple of weeks. So I'm sure he'll give it a run in at least one of those two events if history speaks for itself. But yeah, going back to Bridgman, I think he's a 26-year-old kid. He's been on tour for a couple of years, and we've gotten, I think, one of the big storylines of thus far of 2026 has been these like young kids kind of coming and taking over, and maybe some of the name brand players that we've gotten used to being at the top. Your Cantleys, maybe your Xanders a little bit. Even like a Henley or, I mean, you could even argue Scotty, even though I would say Victor Ludwig, two other guys that are like brand name commodities, and they've kind of gotten replaced by this new crop of your Goddard's who've won twice. Pearson Cootie started the year very, really well. Ryan Gerard, Jake Knapp. I mean, he's a little older, but still kind of, again, certainly a guy that's coming onto the scene and seemingly playing well every single week. Akshay Bhatia, same thing. But of that crop, I think Bridgman went a bit underrated, in comparison to his peers. And I don't know whether that's just because he didn't really have maybe quite the same amateur pedigree, or if maybe the statistical profile wasn't as sexy. He didn't really display like the immense power off the tee or like some sort of like legit approach play, like upper echelon approach play over the last kind of 12, 24 months. But I mean, if you just look in 2026, you kind of work backwards after every tournament and try to figure out where you maybe went wrong. And I saw quite a few Bridgman slips, and I think, just kind of honing in on this recent momentum, a guy that finished 4th, 13th, 18th, and 8th in 4 starts before Riviera, again, a 26-year-old kid who I think a lot of us had high hopes for this year. But even though I didn't maybe see it coming Riviera, I think maybe playing just the angle of, hey, this is a kid that's obviously playing some great golf, contended last week at Pebble Beach. And he's priced at 100, 90, 100 to 1. I felt like were most of the bet slips I saw. So, yeah, just in general, kind of buying into just the recent form and just saying, screw course fit. This guy's playing great, and he's 100 to 1.
Yeah, I
was the
think you bring up a great point because I think a lot of the time this year, I could speak for myself. I caught myself kind of dismissing guys because of some of the bigger names in the field, and oh, this guy's not going to be able to beat them. And in the past couple of weeks, it got her up, did it, and event that I wasn't expecting him to pull off, and Bridgman as well. So maybe it's time to kind of
yeah,
start taking name association out of it and giving these guys some credit for how well they're playing.
for sure. For sure, yeah, and I was certainly guilty of that as well as I fell into the Cam Young trap for probably the 20th time in my life. So, of course, he backed on the top 10. Like I checked my app midway through Sunday. Was actually kind of like upset that Cam Young was like 7th because I know I'm gonna reference that in 12 months time when he's like 25-1 at Riviera, uh, and do the same thing over again. But yeah, credit to Bridgman. I mean, he played so well. As Rory and Xander and these guys were kind of faltering, these proven commanders were faltering on Saturday afternoon. Bridgman out there on the back 9 and went like birdie on 10, just stuck one to like half a foot on 11. I think he birdied either 12 or 13. I mean, he just absolutely took that field to task down the stretch, and it went from like a tie for the lead with Rory to like a 6-shot deficit, felt like, in 20-30 minutes. So credit to him. He took it by the scruff of the neck and then, did exactly what he had to do. I mean, I watched, I didn't get to watch live most of the event, but I kind of was tracking on the side. And outside of maybe 11, there was really never a moment where Bridgman looked to be in trouble. He had a couple like nervy par putts, maybe down the stretch, but never really, had the big number in play. Whereas, kind of just strung pars together and made Rory hit some pretty incredible shots to even make that close down the stretch. So, yeah, certainly not a fluke, and be interesting to see kind of where his price goes in signature events going forward, especially considering I would say like the Florida swings typically a part of the schedule I feel like would suit him better than even the West Coast swing, being a South Carolina guy, Bermuda grass. Clearly the iron play is improving, but obviously has the putting kind of superpower there already built in.
Yeah, it is going to be interesting to see kind of now with all these young guys making the jump and pulling out these big wins, kind of how the odds board shakes out. And whether we start to see kind of bigger numbers on these, I guess, bigger name guys that haven't really performed in these events. Because it's going to be very interesting to kind of dissect the board and not fall, trapped to certain names moving forward. But I think if, we've learned anything the last couple of weeks, that's, sort of cost us. Well, I guess in your case, Morikawa was a good fit as well, but he did kind of pull that off, and that's something that
back-to-back weeks you've gotten long shots that are like very different in terms of like process, right? You've got like the long-term like you're just trusting like long-term skill set with Morikawa versus like the oncoming form with the Bridgman. So yeah, multiple ways to get it done on tour, but yeah, a lot of big names. I think definitely scrambling a little bit as we kind of head to Florida, and obviously a lot of them will be or most of them will be in attendance next week at Bay Hill. So we'll talk about it at that time. But move on to Cognizant Classic, an event that we kind of were talking before the show has undergone a pretty large scale. I don't want to say devolution because that sounds mean, but I think for the greater opinion of golf Twitter, I think most of us have been pretty non-receptive to the changes that they decided to make in PGA National over the last couple of years. When we were kind of coming up, this was like outside of maybe Torrey Pines, the first like major test where we saw Sung Jae win at 6 under. We saw Keith Mitchell win to play off a 9 under. If you got to 10 under on PGA National over 4 days, you were kind of winning by daylight. So last 2 years, though, we've seen, of course, last year Joe Highsmith win at 17 under par, or 19 under par, I'm sorry, with back-to-back 64s on the weekend. And then the year before that, we saw Austin Eckroat on a Monday win at 17 under. So, of course, scoring averages have dipped way below their historic baselines, minus 1.62, minus 1.09 over the last 2 years. And, we'll do what we always do here. We'll build a little rudimentary model through the rabbit hole at BetSperts Golf. I'll give you the floor, Matt. Overall thoughts on PGA National this week, and if you give me one stat that you would lead with when it comes to assessing player viability this week.
Yeah, I think you kind of nailed it on the head. It used to be an event that I really liked to watch because it was an extreme challenge for everyone in the last couple of years. I mean, it's played a lot easier and kind of taken a lot of what we loved as fans out of it. And of course, now we're dealing with, I guess, sort of where it falls on the schedule, just a weakened field as well, which makes sense because it's kind of just stuck in between signature events, following, back to back, and then you got one next week. So just kind of a tough spot for it on the schedule. But still, it's always nice to get to Florida. I like the Florida swing a lot from a viewing perspective, and it's nice to kind of have your guys start early on Thursday and not have to kind of wait till mid morning for them to tee off. You wake up and, well, depending on what time you wake up, but some guys are kind of already out there on the course and stuff like that. So it's always fun. But yeah, from a course perspective, I am going to start off this week in our model with approach from 150 to 200.
Yep.
I think this is, going to be a big stat this week. It's going to be, a lot more crucial. The fairways have gotten a little wider the last couple of years and become a little bit easier to hit. Kind of the scrambling around the green has gone down, and it's just going to kind of be a big time second shot course. We'll kind of get to some other stats that matter too, but that's definitely where I'm going to start my focus this week.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we talked about kind of the precipitous decline in difficulty around PGA National, kind of from 2015 to 2020. We saw GIR rates of 57, 59, 60, 56, 58, 56. Last 2 years, 70.1 and 70 even. So, yeah, huge jump up in GIR percentage. And that, of course, is going to take away from the around the green play for sure, as guys will have less opportunity to scramble. I'll kind of lean into the other short game stat then. Typically, when you get easier score conditions and lots of greens hit in regulation, putting is going to play a pretty big factor. So this is the first instance we have of pure Bermuda grass this year. We've been on kind of overseeds in Poana for the greater part of the first 2 months. I guess actually Waialae was the first instance of Bermuda grass, but at least for the first time in 4 or 5 tournaments, we are on the good old Florida Bermuda. So yeah, definitely a good week to hone in on some guys that have played well historically on the Southeast, either have maybe SEC roots or are kind of steered away from the California narratives, going back to the grainy Bermuda. Which, although the greenside surrounds have been overseeded and they're no longer like your typical Bermuda rough that we used to see in Honda, the greens themselves are still the typical Bermuda grass we see at a place like, I think we'll see it at Bay Hill next week. We see it at like TBC Southwind and other places later in the season. So, yeah, it's kind of tough. We talked about this before the show, trying to find, I feel like, metrics that really are predicted this week, because it feels like a golf course where you club down a lot off the tee. The GIR percentage is higher, so that takes away on the green. So a lot of my write-ups this week are just going to be based on the 2 stats we just mentioned. If you pick your middle irons and you can putt, you're in, I think, pretty good shape this week. So yeah, 25% weight for me on Bermuda putting last 75 rounds.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think when I was looking at kind of guys this week, when I was researching, I primarily looked at approach play and putting, because that's really what it's going to come down to this week. I'll still add in. I'll do stretch gain off the tee. I don't think this week it's interesting because I think accuracy to a degree will be important. There is kind of a lot of water around this place, but like you just kind of mentioned and alluded to, there is going to be a lot of like clubbing down off the tee and stuff like that. So when that comes into play, driving accuracy isn't necessarily going to be a stat that fully depicts that, because guys aren't going to be hitting driver off the tee all the time. So I'll just do off the tee in general. I'm looking for guys who at least are not going to suck in that category.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And I think there have been some changes that have been made in the transition from 2025 to 2026 that I think would support perhaps a bigger emphasis on driving. The par 4 second hole has been lengthened by about 20 yards. The par 5 18th has been lengthened by about 30 yards. The fairways have actually gotten narrower. We've seen a decrease in driving accuracy over the last kind of 2 to 3 years. I think last year was about 28, 29 yards wide on average, which is below average for the PGA Tour. And the rough actually this year is up from 2.5 to 3 inches. So it seems like they are kind of taking a little bit of the critique seriously and trying to put a bit more teeth back in PGA National. I don't think it's going to be all the way back to what it was, especially if conditions remain as benign as they were today. in South Florida. But yeah, I certainly think we've seen some elite drivers like your Jake Knaps, like your Midwood Lees, like your Airfreight Warrens, Austin Eckroat, Cameron Young. A lot of these guys that have excelled off the tee at PJ National have kind of climbed the leaderboard in recent years. So yeah, I certainly agree with that. We're just going to go general driving the last 9 months for 15%.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, I will go. I'll just go general approach play. Like I said, I think approach play is paramount this week. I think it's really historically been kind of just an irons and putting contest over the last 2 years. You look at the winners, Highsmith last year, getting 6 strokes putting, 2.7 on approach. The year before that, Eckroat 3.7 putting, 5.8 on approach. Nobody that ranked in, or no one that finished inside the top 20 last year lost strokes with their iron play. So again, when conditions are this benign and you have to get to like 15 to 20 under most likely to contend this week, it's really just a matter of being able to stick iron shots close. So I know we already have the weighting on middle iron play, but yeah, just gonna kind of double down on that, because I think if you are like an elite iron player, this is a golf course where, again, you're not going to be as tested off the tee as you would be in some of the stops early in the year, like a TPC Scottsdale or a Torrey Pines, etc. So a lot of guys, a lot of holes, guys are going to be playing from the same spots, and it's really just going to be about knocking down flags with your approach shots.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a good one to add in, and I know right now we're kind of running a little bare on the stats that we're going to continue to hammer home, but we'll hit those 6. I think we had talked about one in the opening where before we started, but you had like a off the tee on like positional courses.
Yeah.
So I'll add that in too to kind of hone in on, I guess, more what we're looking for this week. See if maybe that helps some certain guys pop than just a general off the tee statistic.
For sure, it gives you a little bit more context than because it's a much different driving strategy this week than it would be at Torrey Pines or maybe last year, like Oakmont or one of the BMW championships or something like that. So I do have a specialized kind of filter here for the comp courses I have, like positional, waterlogged, high miss failure penalty type of golf courses, TPC Sawgrass, this course, Twin Cities, Innisbrook, Sedgefield, Colonial, Harbortown, Southwind, Wildlife. Those are kind of the ones that I have kind of filtered into this. So just strokes getting off the tee at those golf courses over the last 50 rounds is going to be his final one. And I'll just kind of piggyback again. I don't really want around the green play. Course historically here has been pretty lax. I mean, the last 2 winners haven't really recorded any top results before their win. Highsmith and Eckroat, and then 2 years ago or 3 years ago when Cole finished runner-up, he finished runner-up on debut. Gerard notably Monday qualified in here. It was his first PGA Tour start, finished T4. So we've seen enough success on debut and without course history. I think in general these Florida courses have so much variance with the water in play that course history tends to mean a little bit less, because one bad swing can kind of sink your week. So gonna rely obviously less on around the green, less on course history. So just gonna lead into putting again. Not much nuance here. It's just I feel like there's 2 to 3 things you really need to be good at this week to contend. So we're just gonna keep doubling down on this. So yeah, that's our 6 stats. We have 25% weight, proximity 150 to 200 yards, 25% weight on Bermuda grass putting over the last 75 rounds, 15% weight on both off the tee and approach, each last 9 months, and then 10% weighting on positional driving and strokes gained putting, just general, independent of agronomy, last 9 months. So let me pull this up. Always makes me title the model. Okay, share this screen. Wow, we have a very surprising number 1. Kind of goes into I guess the strength or lack thereof in the field, but we have Chris Ventura number 1. That is stunning to me. He's really good at putting over Bermuda, top 5 in both our putting metrics, so that's primarily the reason. Not very good on the off the tee positional. Wow, yeah, putting just carrying him. As you can see, the kind of the total, the score here is quite close. So there's not like the Scotty models where there's a couple tiers between Scotty and number 2. But Ventura does rate out number 1 for us. So that'll be an interesting discussion. Mac Meisler comes in at number 2. Lee Hodges comes in at 3. Austin Eckroat 4. Ricky Castillo, number 5. Another interesting one. Yeah, really good in the positional driving model. Good Rita Potter. Okay. Nikolai Højgaard, okay, finally one of the favorites comes in at number 6. Echeverria comes in at 7. Sami Välimäki 8. Carson Young 9. Andrew Putnam 10. Gary Woodland 11. Max McGreevy 12. Daniel Berger 13. Keith Mitchell 14. Shane Lowry 15. Fishburne 16. Davis Thompson, Kevin Yu, Sam Ryder, Takumi Kanai coming on, round out the top 20. So there's hard to be some more predictable names as we get kind of further down the list, but maybe the overemphasis on putting has kind of gotten us here with your Venturas. I know Castillo's not the best putter long term, but yeah, somehow he's in the top 5. So yeah, man, I'm quite surprised. I'm assuming that that's your reaction to looking over our top 20.
It was not the names I was expecting to see up there, but yeah, I mean, I think we're in for an interesting week, but this is certainly not kind of who I expected it to shoot out, at least at the top. But
maybe that goes to show I need to amend my betting strategy this week if none of the guys that I was like intending on talking about are even on the top 20. But yeah, again, that's our rudimentary model. Last week, of course, Bridgman was not in our top 20, so we're 2 of 4 kind of hitting the winners in the top 20 there. But just have fun, have to kind of, as used to talk about what we're valuing this week on the golf course. So of course, not the end all be all, but yeah, certainly a nice tool to play around with if you guys are looking to do some handicapping this week or going forward. So that is that. Let's go into the odds board here. Stop sharing. All right. So where is Gerard, by the way? Because he is the favorite on it. He's 31 on our rudimentary model here. But yeah, 3 guys under 20, or actually 4 guys under 25 to 1 on the model, of course, or in the pricing. Of course, Bridgman, Griffin, I believe Adam Scott was another one that was quite highly priced, and he withdrew heading into this week. So obviously a lot of shifts have come. If we would have recorded this on Sunday night or Monday morning, but as it stands here on Tuesday night, Ryan Gerard 18 to 1, best price available on DraftKings. Shane Lowry 19 to 1, Nikolai Højgaard and Rasmus Højgaard are the 2 Danish twins, 21 and 23 to 1. You mentioned before the show this is kind of like a swing season event, and yeah, it's kind of like a mix between like swing season / European Tour, mid-level European Tour event with the Højgaards and Lowry. Yeah, it's like if the Barracuda met like the French Open or something like that. I feel like that'd be kind of like what this odds board looks like. But yeah, I mean, the conversation, of course, like there's merits to all these guys. Gerard playing great, Lowry with the course history, Nikolai playing great, Rasmus, I'm a little bit less interested in personally, but there's merit to all these guys. I think the question is just going to be how big of a price or how small of a price are you willing to kind of eat on guys that aren't exactly the most proven winners to this level. So first of all, pick yourself a favorite, Gerard, Lowry, and one of the Højgaards. And of course, number 2, if you have a bet in this range, that would be great as well.
I think I like Gerard the best out of this range, but I just don't think there's any way I could take him as like the favorite at 16 to 1 in an event. I will say the one thing that I'm going to have to try to do this week is not focus as much on the number, because in kind of a field like this and an odds board like this, I don't know if that we're necessarily going to see a good number on anybody, at least in comparison to what we're used to seeing. But I think, Gerard at 16 to 1 is a pretty tough pill to swallow. I'm kind of with you. I think Nikolai is probably my second favorite in this range. Yep. He does make a lot of sense. It's not something I've taken yet, but I could perhaps be talked into it. If I was going to go at the top of the board, that would probably be the one that made kind of the most sense to me between what I'm looking for this week, and he's at a little bit better of a number.
Yeah, definitely more palatable. I've definitely bet Nikolai at worse numbers in European Tour fields. So maybe that's just the reasoning. I've lost on like 14 to 1 and Razal Kaima a couple times. So, but yeah, Nikolai certainly playing great. T3, T22, T4, last 3 starts worldwide for the Dane, and quite frankly, I don't really know why Rasmus is like in the same tier as Nikolai right now. I know they're twins, but Nikolai to me brings much more upside on approach, and I think they're pretty similar entities off the tee. I would actually trust Nikolai more with the driver in hand. Rasmus pretty recently has just been like very putting and very putting only, which I think Nikolai has just as high of a ceiling with a flat stick as well. So I trust the ball striking and the putting a lot better. If you're able to get like a twin v twin matchup, I would much prefer Nikolai, I think, to Rasmus this week. And then yeah, Lowry sub 20-1 on the PJ Tour. I talked about him as a long shot last week, and then midway through making my argument, I realized he had won in America since 2015. So now, I mean, I bet Lowry at Honda plenty of times, but yeah, this is a price that I don't think I'm willing to swallow. Shout out to Chris over there. He said Ventura trying to capture some of the glory from all the Norwegian winter gold medalists. So yeah, a little momentum for the country of Norway. Didn't work out for Hovland last week, but maybe Ventura can reconcile for the flag here on the PGA Tour. But yeah, I think I would agree. I would go Gerard over Lowry, and I'd go to Nikolai over Rasmus, but not a ton of interest. I was listening to shows that were recorded like on Sunday or Monday earlier today, and like they were listing Gerard like 25, 26-1, and that's obviously a pretty nice number if you're able to get that in hand. But yeah, I guess I picked a bad week to be traveling on Monday and missed out on a lot of the good numbers at the top of the board. So we move on into the mid 20s. Yeah, 25-1. Michael Thorbjornsen, fresh off, or I guess he's had one start between the breakout T3 at the Phoenix Open, but of course, going to be a very trendy name, I think, this week. Keith Mitchell, past champion of the Honda Classic in 2019, I believe. 2018, 2019, 28-1. Brooks Koepka, 33-1. We'll have a conversation about that. Daniel Berger, 33-1. And we'll stop there because there's a lot of guys at 40. So Thorbjornsen, Mitchell, Koepka, and Berger. I bet Berger every year. Albeit he's usually in a little bit better form coming out of like Phoenix and Pebble Beach. So I think that's a little concerning, the fact that he was such a no-show at a golf course he's historically dominated. But yeah, where are you sitting? Are you on Team Brooks this week? Because I'm assuming you are, 33-1.
I haven't made up my mind on that. I figured we'd get to that. I'll start with the fact that I did take Berger.
Okay, yep.
I had a 35 on him, and I'm kind of with you. He's usually in, I guess, slightly better form. I mean, he did hit it really well on approach in Phoenix. He had a really pretty poor week at Pebble, as you mentioned, and that's a course that fits him pretty well. But it's almost one of those things. Like, a lot of people liked him at Pebble. It was kind of something that I was never really going to consider in like an elevated event with such kind of a stacked field. I don't know that I necessarily trust him in those type of events, but this is sort of the events that he tends to win. He's been good here. He's a Florida guy. I think if he can, if he could hit his irons the way he did in Phoenix, I think he could very much be in the mix this week. I mean, if he gets the putter going on Bermuda, which is, what he's the most familiar with as far as a green complex, he could be, in the mix and should have a decent chance this week. So I did take him in this range.
I like it. I like that bet. I was looking at that as well. I mean, like, I understand Lowry's maybe played a little bit better in terms, especially in Europe. Like, he played quite well at the start of the year and end of the last year. But like the fact that Lowry's 16 or 18-1 and Berger's 33-35 doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I think they have very similar profiles just in general statistically. And, Berger, I think, to your point, being a Florida guy, being from the area, South Florida guy, has the Bermuda track record. He's gained strokes on the greens in 6 to 7 starts here at the Cognizant / Honda. Has finished 4th or better on 3 occasions over his last 7 starts as well, including a T4 on debut, runner-up on debut back in 2015. So, yeah, I mean, the consistency hasn't been there week in, week out for Berger. Like, he's, we're used to, like, in this heyday, 21, 22, he was playing well kind of every week, and even maybe Vinny's didn't suit him, he would still manage to ball strike his way to like a top 25 or top 30. That floor is kind of gone for Berger, but he's shown us, enough upside, as you said, leading the field and approaching in Phoenix, coming T6 at the Sony, which is probably the best comp course we have to date, to what he'll face this week at Hyundai. I think it makes a lot of sense to make that move at 35. Thor Bjornsson, I think it's tough with Thor Bjornsson because like the breakout does feel quite obvious because he played well all fall. We got like the top 20 great ball striking performance at the Farmers at Torrey Pines, and then he steps off the 15th green at Phoenix as the live favorite after the eagle he made on the par 5, and then proceeds to go bogey 16 17 to kind of throw away his chances there. But yeah, I mean the breakout again, it feels like it's coming. He was like probably I didn't even mention him in terms of like the young guys coming up of the Gerards and Goddard's of the world, but he was like kind of the top of the list for these like under 26s of guys that in 2026 we all presume was going to get a win. I think this tournament is a little bit tough, not only because of the price, but because I think it does take away maybe his biggest weapon historically. I think his driver's the best club in his bag, and around this layout, even with the lengthening of the golf course, you might only have 5 to 6 of those in a given round. So I think on a golf course that does lean so much into the approach play and the putting, even though he does have the stealing ability to like, to gain 5, 6, 7 on approach, and he's not a bad putter long term. I just think there's going to be better fits down the road. So I'm willing to kind of to miss. I know everyone wants to be there for the first Thor Bjornsson win, but I'm kind of okay missing it if it's here at 25-1.
Yeah, I'm with you. Between the number and I don't think, to your point, it's like the perfect course for him to separate himself from the field. So I mean, his talent would have shocked me if he won, no, but it's not something that I'm necessarily down to take the plunge on this week.
Got you.
The other guy, I mean, Brooks was kind of the big question mark for me in this range. What to do with him, because this is one that
he's won before. Or no, he came to Mitchell. He hasn't won.
To Mitchell. But you can kind of argue that given the odds board, there is sort of some value on Brooks at this number. There's arguments to make both ways. I mean, for one, he obviously has hit the ball actually pretty well in his first 2 starts. From a ball striking perspective, he just hasn't been able to putt. And now there's people who would argue like, oh, the POA is not his best surface, and he's back on Bermuda now. And if he can get the putter going, he's already hitting it pretty well. It wouldn't be shocking to see him win. I think sort of the counter to that is that Brooks hasn't really putted well for the better part of like 2 years. It's not like a 2 event problem for him. So that's sort of what the holdup is for me in an event that is probably going to get won somewhere in the high teens to 20 under. You talked about guys hit like 70% of greens. It's going to come down to a lot of putting. Taking a guy who hasn't been able to putt for 2 years isn't necessarily, I guess, the best bet. But then when you start trying to justify some other guys like in this range, it's kind of like, I don't know. I mean, if I'm going to take a guy based on ball striking stats, I would rather just take Brooks than, some of the other guys that I'm sure we'll mention in a little bit. So I'm kind of torn. I didn't know. I was going to listen to what you had to say and see kind of where I fell on it.
The problem with Brooks is like, again, like you kind of said, you can kind of spend it any way you want depending on which direction you're going, right? Because like Koepka, I think just his profile in the game and the fact that he's, the same price or even, lesser price than like a Keith Mitchell or Højgaard, just in a vacuum that just feels a bit wrong, especially when you consider, like you said, the ball striking life he showed in Europe end of last year and then kind of coming into this year. I will say, if there is one golf course, not just because Bermuda, but if there's one golf course where like I feel like an ailing putter can kind of come back to life, it is PGA National. Like these greens are very flat. There's not a lot to them. We've seen, like pretty bad putters through the years, like actually excel on these greens. Like 2 years ago, Eric Van Rooyen led the field in putting. Here, Doug Gim gained like 4.7 strokes putting, which is one of his career best weeks. Like Highsmith last year, who won, not exactly like a prolific putter, definitely known as more of a ball striker. Same with like a JJ Spawn who finished second. So certainly I think putting, like you have to putt well to win here, but we do have some track record of some less than stellar putters coming here and kind of finding it, which I don't think is a coincidence when you consider like just how benign these greens tend to be. Rated as a bottom 5 Of course, on tour last year in putting difficulty. So it's not just the around the green game. Obviously, a lot is going to be made about the easiness of the around the green complexes here, but the putting, I think, is kind of on a very similar level there. So when you kind of take that into account, of course, like it's a lot of wish casting with Brooks, but at the same time, if you catch Brooks on a good week, all of a sudden, like he's a guy where even though he's like 35, 40 to 1 now in market, if he goes out there and shoots a good score in round one, like he's the live favorite in this field. So like books are going to give you that respect like very early. So I actually don't really mind taking the shot at 35, 40 to 1. Because this field, as we'll get to later, it's pretty devoid of like legitimate options. So if he brings anywhere close to like his A game, he's very, very live to beat this field, of course.
Yeah. I think it's a fair point. I think to kind of your point too. I mean, for as poor as he's putted really for the last couple of years, he has had weeks in there where he's putted well.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's an impossible thing. One thing that kind of, I guess, maybe it's reading too much into it. I don't love him like switching putters. It's just kind of like to me, like a sign of just like a complete lack of confidence in his game. Like he's infamously said, like he's not a tinkerer with his clubs, and he uses the same Nike 3-iron that he used since back in 10 years ago. So he won 5 majors with his last putter. It's kind of crazy to see him just kind of switching putters week to week. So that's something that definitely sounded an alarm for me, that he's really kind of unhappy with what he's doing and has lost confidence in himself on the green. But he's back and, close to home, and maybe I'm sure that's what he's been working on the last couple of weeks and back in this area. So that's something I'm hoping that maybe you'll get an eye on him tomorrow and see kind of how he's looking, what putter he's using, and see kind of how he's feeling on that front. But I think you bring up a lot of good points. And as we go, at first I wasn't going to take him, but then the further I started going down the odds board and looking at different guys and trying to make arguments for different guys, I'm like, well, if I'm going to bet a guy that hasn't been able to putt recently, I might as well just take Brooks.
Yes, exactly. I think that point's well founded. I'm going to do my best to find Koepka. I'll be on site tomorrow. I initially was going to go on site today, but I'll definitely be there tomorrow, and he will be among the first names that I know he's actually doing a press conference tomorrow, so we'll maybe get some answers with that. But yeah, certainly I think there's worse bets to make. I'm swimming around the 35 to 1 on Koepka right now. So all right, that's enough of our weekly Brooks talk. Won't be able to do it, or unless he wins this week, won't be able to do it again until Valspar, one of the Texas events. So had to get that out. Of course, obviously he made the $5 million charitable contribution today that the wire officially went through. So maybe some added incentive. Win this event, win Bayhill next week, and then you're back to even from the $5 million you lost upon restarting the tour. So if we know Brooks has got kind of some petty motivation sometimes, so that'd be fun. If he shouts out the PJ Tour for costing $5 million and then earning it all back. But let's move into the 40 to 1 range. Again, a lot of guys. It does feel like a week where even the books are a little bit kind of skittish. You've seen a lot of kind of variations of price in this 40 to 1 range, and a lot of guys just kind of stacked here between 40 and 50 to 1. Again, not going to get our full thoughts on all these guys, but just 40 to 1 starting here on at MGM. Alex Smalley comes in 40 to 1. Will Zalatoris 40 to 1. Max McGreevy, Rasmus Niergaard Peterson, Davis Thompson, all 40 to 1. Aaron Rai 42 to 1. Christian Bezuidenhout 46. Haotong Li 47. Mac Meisner 47 as well. So Smalley, Zalatoris, McGreevy, Niergaard Peterson, Thompson, Rai, Bezuidenhout, Haotong, and Meisner. I know Meisner was actually, I think, second in our modeling, and he's rated out quite well for me in a lot of different numbers that I've kind of come through. Really just not really a lot of weaknesses in his game. Top 30 in Bermuda putting, mid-iron proximity, general approach, general off the tee. So just kind of a pretty steady profile, which I think should work here on a golf course like this. So any of those names kind of from Smalley to Meisner catch your interest, or maybe someone you have bet at this point in the week?
Yeah, Meisner is actually one of the 3 guys I've taken so far.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I was happy to see him pop up where he was in our model, but you kind of nailed it with him in everything you just said. He's hitting it really well on approach lately. He's also like one of those guys. I kind of talked to you before, and I was like, it feels like a swing season event. He's one of those guys I always find myself taking in those events. and he's played pretty well in them. He hasn't got one across the finish line, but I like his game a lot. He's kind of one of my favorite younger guys or non-top guys to kind of follow and take in events like this. So I did take him. We'll see how it pans out, but yeah, I feel like
his two best results on the PGA Tour so far: Wyndham, kind of short positional breeding grass, and then Charles Schwab in 2024 T5, another kind of positional club down course. So maybe there's something to be said for the affinity there with some of the shorter courses on tour. But yeah, I don't mind that. I mean, when your numbers point to a guy that's 50-1 as the second best player in this field, then certainly it's worth them digging into. So what number did you get on Meisner?
I had a 50 on him.
50.
And 47. Like, this feels pretty good. And at the time, everyone was kind of withdrawing, and I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to take it. I'm probably going to end up on him anyway.
Yeah, understood. So you're on Berger and Meisner so far, 35-50.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else kind of stick out to you in this range? I think it's really interesting.
So I did consider Davis Thompson because he's hitting the ball so well. But this was he was the guy I was going to reference before, and I didn't want to kind of get ahead of myself. But he's hitting the ball so well, but he's putting so poorly. And as I'm like trying to talk myself into Davis Thompson, I kind of had like a coming to life moment where I'm like, if I'm going to take a guy who's hitting it well and isn't putting well, why don't I just take Brooks Koepka? Because he's not that much lower than him on the odds board, and he obviously has much more pedigree and much higher of a ceiling. So that was kind of where I sort of talked myself out of Davis Thompson, because if I'm going to take that sort of profile, I might as well just take Brooks.
Yeah, I'm kind of lukewarm on Thompson. I can kind of get there because I do believe in long-term talent. But yeah, he's just another one of those guys kind of falls into a little bit of like a 6 out of 10 for me as opposed to like a 7 or 8 out of 10. So no real strong opinion there. I'll put forth Aaron Rai as my favorite in this range. Played well for 3 rounds at least at Riviera. Had a horrible final round that pushed him back into a tie for 28th, but was like legit contending there for a spell at Riviera. But again, in a field where we're kind of scrambling for like elite tools, I think Aaron Rai possesses 2 like really, really top quality traits. Number one, like as reliable as they come off the tee. I mean, number one in driving action in this field, number one in good drive percentage in this field. And then we brought it up so much in the preview to this event, but he is legitimately the best middle iron player thus far in 2026. He, over his first 4 events, has gained 0.135 shots per shot from 150 to 200 yards. That is better than Siwoo Kim, better than Matt Fitzpatrick, Gerard, Hovland, Kitayama, all these guys that rate very highly from a middle iron perspective. And then, yeah, he's got 2 legit skills, and he's a proven winner. This is a guy that has won 6 times worldwide in his career, including beating Tommy Fleetwood and Rory McIlroy down the stretch at Abu Dhabi to end last season on the DP World Tour. His only win so far on the PGA Tour has come again on a shorter Bermuda grass golf course at the Wyndham. So he kind of has, again, the putting is never going to be like great week in, week out for Rai, but he has shown at least some sort of comfort on the greens in the past. And yeah, he's sitting here at like 45-1. Again, in a field that I just don't have a lot of conviction for. And I know what I'm going to get with Aaron Rai week in, week out. I know I'm going to get really reliable driving and some irons that are really firing at the moment. So yeah, he's my favorite in this range. He's the one click that I think I'll be making for sure at the end of the show.
Yeah, I don't hate that. And I was, as you were going through it, and as we had just talked about it with Meisner, coming runner-up at the Wyndham. Yeah, right on that event, as you noted. So this is kind of a good profile course for him. So yeah, I think that's a very fair play and kind of a more fair number than a lot of these guys.
Yeah, that's what stuck out to me as well. I mean, I'm just overrating. I mean, I've kind of talked in the past about like my affinity for these type of like positional players that have like really good irons and can drive the ball straight, but maybe don't putt as well. So I mean, I like Aaron Rai a lot, but yeah, that's what stuck out to me as well. Like, I don't really see how he's lower priced than like a Smalley or McGreevy, or like an European who haven't really, I don't think, proved nearly as much on the world stage as he has. So that is one of the values that certainly popped up to me. I think the last guy I kind of want to talk about is Zalatoris, who I think you can make a very similar case to Kepka in the fact that, like, stylistically, I think he fits this course really well. Like, elite mid iron player historically, has really put together some really good driving splits at the American Express, at the Ned Bank last fall in the DP, and then his last start last year at the PGA Championship drove the ball really well. So it seems like he's come back and regained that fast of his game. Of course, like, the putting is always going to be the issue, but if you're just looking for like pure iron players, a guy that's won at TPC Southwind, which I consider a pretty legitimate comp to this week. Again, like 40-1, 45-1. I don't mind kind of taking the shot there on Zalatoris.
Yeah, I mean, it would be pretty funny too for how many years golf Twitter was chasing Will Zalatoris every week, almost regardless of the number, and now it doesn't seem like, at least from what I've seen, he has a ton of traction this week or interest from people, and he is sitting there at a pretty fair price in one of the weaker fields that we've seen. So it's definitely it's interesting.
I mean, last 12 months from 150 to 200, he's a better iron player than Scotty Scheffler. He trails only Hovland, Koivu, Hatton, Lowry, and Siwoo Kim from that range over the last 12 months, which he only has 145 registered shots, which is frankly less than it's more than like Koivu and Hatton, but obviously much less than like a Lowry or Siwoo who plays on the PGA Tour, who's played on the PGA Tour regularly for the last 12 months. But I mean, there's no doubt that part of his game I trust. Of course, the putting is probably going to sink him, but at 45-1, I don't mind taking a shot. Especially, he's played well. He's played well in Florida in the past. Mixed the players a couple of times. I was on him at Bay Hill 2 years ago when he held the Saturday lead until the back nine there on in round 3. So again, kind of just banking on pedigree in a field that doesn't really have a lot of it. So I would back him over like a Smalley or McGreevy, etc.
Yeah, that's interesting. Because I saw his name in the beginning, and I kind of didn't really think too much about it. But the more we talk, it makes some sense, and it would just be kind of funny to see him win, and no one's on him in one of the worst fields that we've seen. He's one of the better players in here, and he's at a pretty decent number. So, you've piqued my interest a little bit.
Famous last words. We go on like a 10-minute tangent at the start of the show about how much putting matters, and then I bring up Aaron Ryan, Will Zalatoris, first 2 names out of my mouth. So.
Yeah, we spent 7 minutes on Brooks Koepka.
But yeah, that's where we're at this week. If eventually we'll get to a putter or someone that we can actually rely on to make a few putts down the stretch. But yeah, I would say definitely Rye's my favorite in this range, and then it probably goes Zalatoris, and then maybe like Rasmus, like Nirgard Peterson, I feel like is quite interesting. I mean, the world's kind of onto him for a guy that hasn't finished at the top 40 out on the PGA Tour. Like, he's getting a lot of respect. I know the ball strike numbers are pretty good, and he played really well down the stretch, or really all year long on the DP World Tour last year. But quite a steep ascent, I think, for Nirgard Peterson to be 40-1 already.
I'm with you on that one.
Okay, all right. That's enough of that range. Let's go into the 50s now. Another top tier putter leading the 50-1 range, my boy Rico Hoey, who I might have to bet because that's my guy. I'll be on site all week. So Rico 50-1, Thorbjorn Olesen 50-1, Chris Kirk, champion here 3 years ago, 50-1, Johnny Kiefer 52, I know a very popular name this week, Max Homa 53, Jordan Smith 55, Nico Echeverria 59. Again, man, the swing season vibes are very strong with this list. Rico, Thorbjorn Olesen, Kirk, Kiefer, Homa, Smith, Echeverria. Is there anyone you like in this range? And no is also a valid answer. You don't have to.
I haven't taken anyone. There was a few guys I kind of thought of. Echeverria kind of seems like these are the events he plays well in. We saw him play well at Pebble the other week. So he's someone I didn't dismiss. I mean, I certainly took a look at Max Homa just from a name brand at
Yep,
this
yep.
range, but
But
there's not a
still, man.
ton to
Yeah.
justify him at this point.
Ogre,
I want him
Kepka,
to play well so
Zalatoris.
bad, but I don't think
Yeah.
I could. I don't think I could bet him to that point, even though I've tried.
Yeah. I mean, last week was a lot of putting for the most part, I think. He had a couple highlights on Golf Channel on Saturday, but of course didn't really mix. Of course, finished T37 his best start since the MX. But yeah, I think when Max Homa goes to Riviera and Torrey Pines and goes miscut 37th, that's a bit of an indictment, unfortunately, on his long term ceiling. So yeah, not a lot to really draw from. I got tricked 1 week at the Farmers, and I think that's just about enough Max Homa
Yeah,
for
I
me
took
for
him with you, and he was playing with Brooks, so I
double
I
trouble.
watched every one of his shots, which was even more incentive to not take him again.
Oh God, I want to talk about Kiefer though, because I know he was a guy that if I would have been by my computer on Monday, I probably would have at like 65 to 1 because I think that was the price that he opened at, and then it got immediately kind of cooked down to like 45-50. But Kiefer, a guy that so far in 2025, like ball striking it so well. Of course, we know about the pedigree of him on the Corn Ferry Tour last season. Set a tour record, like all-time record in scoring average. Only guy in history on the Corn Ferry Tour to record a sub 68 scoring average last year. Did it in all four facets. Finished fourth on that tour in total driving. Finished 12th in GR percentage, second in scrambling, 10th in putting average. So he was good across the board. Of course, kind of rudimentary stats as opposed to strokes gained on the Corn Ferry, but at least showed legit signs in all four of those categories. And then so far through four starts, he hasn't finished better than 27th, but his per round ball striking splits are behind only Rory and Siwoo Kim so far in 2026. The putter has been pretty abysmal. Short game, very similar. But I'll kind of say again, I can kind of excuse a rookie for coming out at places like Torrey Pines and the Waste Management and struggling with a short game. This could be I think a recipe for him to kind of get that back. And again, if you do trust the Corn Ferry Tour stats from last year, like he did finish second scrambling and 10th in putting average. So I think we do have a little bit of a track record there, a little bit of a landmark to go on in terms of projecting him forward. And of course, a guy that a lot of people would have as one of their top prospects coming into the year. So in a field like this, I know the numbers kind of got away from us, but I'm certainly keeping my eye on Kiefer maybe tomorrow, even at 51 price tag.
Yeah, well, I'll give you credit. You were kind of all over him. I think the first episode we did at the MX, you had talked about him and mentioned his name. And like you said, I mean, he said it really well this year. It's been kind of the putter that's let him down, but still a pretty impressive start for him. So, yeah, I mean, I unfortunately missed some of the numbers early that I saw some of the guys able to get on him.
Yeah.
I think sort of that's kind of slide down the odds board is what has turned me off. But I mean, he does make a ton of sense and still might be better value than some of the guys that I might take for, as we get a little bit further along in the show.
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of at a point now where the odds board is so, I mean, the prices are all kind of gone. And to begin with, there weren't many names like at the start of the week I was really interested in, like in the beginning. So I'm kind of at a point where it's just like play the guys that actually have conviction in, even if it goes 10, 15 points away from me. Or even if it has gone, the number has gone 10 to 15 points away from me over the course of the week. I'm okay maybe taking the leftovers just because I do have a little, the short list is quite limited this week in terms of guys I actually like. So yeah, Kiefer would definitely be on that list for me in terms of names I am monitoring. Anyone else you want to talk about? Chris Kirk, Olson, Hoey, Jordan Smith.
I mean, Kirk's playing all right. I thought about him. I mean, I probably just because he's like one here. He's hitting actually really well on approach, but I don't know. I don't know if I see him, winning 2 out of 4 here, but he's hitting his irons pretty well right now at the moment.
Yeah, kind of strange because he ended the year in 2025 so well. Like he finished 14th at the 3M, or second at the Rocket, 14th at the 3M, even finished 12th at the U.S. Open, 5th at the Wyndham, 9th at the St. Jude. And like you said, he's carried over the approach play, but nothing else has come with it. He's
Yeah,
missed
I mean
three.
the last 4 results are like T52 cut, cut, cut.
Yeah,
So not exactly winning form coming in terms of results.
no.
It's almost like we should get a better number on him just based off
Yeah,
like his
it,
finishes. Maybe they're just kind of putting him up there because he's won, and I'm
yeah,
assuming that's kind of what happened with Keith Mitchell too, being all the way up at the top. But
yeah. If Keith Mitchell wins at 29-1, I'll probably never win money on any given thing that happens. So I've been through the Keith Mitchell ringer way too much to make him my biggest bet of the week. I think at least in the outright market. All right, 60-1. We're up to an hour, which is completely fine because I don't really have a ton to go on past that kind of 50-1 range. But of course, Matt does have his long shots article coming out tonight or tomorrow morning, and our full cards will be out again within the next 12 to 24 hours. So, but yeah, let's go through the 61 range here. Christopher Reitan, one of the top 3 European Tour guys. We've talked about Jürgen Peterson already. Penge, of course, was in the final group on Saturday, so maybe it's Reitan's turn to show off some of his potential. 60-1, best number available on him, the Norwegian. Michael Brennan, 60-1. Mackenzie Hughes, former runner-up here, 60-1. Sammy Valimaki, 61. John Perry, 62. Garrick Higo, 66. Matt Wallace, 66. Jaeger, 66. Seamus Power, 68. Ricky Castillo, 69. And Tom Kim, 70 is the best I see. So, again, gave you a lot of names there. Anyone you bet from kind of 60 to 70-1, or any names that kind of stick out as ones you wanted to talk through?
there's no one I've taken. My first glance through the board, I did, kind of take a deeper look at Mackenzie Hughes.
Me too.
He just hasn't really been doing enough lately to convince me to take him this week. He's been like really good around the green, which we talked about is not going to matter a ton this week. I don't know. I mean, I think when he finished well here, it kind of made a little bit more sense from like a grinded out perspective. I don't know if I see Hughes doing it this week on this setup. Michael Brennan, I sort of thought about. He's been pretty good the last couple weeks from a ball striking standpoint. Well, he got DQ'd at the Farmers Insurance, but the American Express and the Phoenix Open, he hit it really well off the tee and on approach. He's been good off the tee in general. The putting hasn't been very good, but he has won already on the PGA Tour, which is a nice selling point for him that we know he can get it across the finish line. So I sort of thought his number wasn't terrible. It would be pretty impressive for him to win kind of 2 in this short stretch of, because he won 1 in the fall. I mean, to win again already at the start of this year, picking up 2, PGA Tour wins in that short span of a time would be pretty impressive feat. I don't know if he's going to necessarily do that, but I thought about him a little bit.
Yeah, I don't have too much to add. I think Brennan's profile is pretty similar to Kiefer's in the way that they both have displayed some like pretty nice ball striking splits to start the year, and obviously the putting and short game have held them back. So I think just by nature, like if you like Kiefer this week, I think Brennan makes similar sense. I would just probably rather go with the guy who has a bit of a bigger sample for me. I know Brennan played really well on the America's Tour last year, but Kiefer, of course, I think has a bit more pedigree with his Corn Ferry track record in 2025, and then he's made more starts so far this year. So 1v1, I would still side with Johnny, but I understand. I understand the Brennan love. I think he's just super talented, obviously, and wouldn't surprise me at all to see him to pop up here. Valimaki is a guy that caught my eye just because, again, like if you just talk about approach play, putting, reliable driving, he won the RSM last year. Like it's a guy that in the approach models like rates out top 20 in this field, kind of from my key approach ranges, and can really like light up with a putter. So I think down the board here, you're really looking for just ceiling outcomes, of course, and we've already kind of seen Valimaki win on a shorter Bermuda golf course just a few months ago. So don't mind him. And then Seamus Power, a guy that's played actually quite well recently. The approach play has been really bad, but everything else has been like actually pretty elite. Last few starts or last 5 starts finished T11, T7, T31, T63, T11. The putter in particular has been kind of the thing that's got him across the line. So again, spike week, a guy that can spike with the putter, and again, this kind of feels like a Seamus Power type of golf course, like positional, maybe a bit of wind kicks up, iron play putting. But again, the arguments are going to be like super strong in this range. But those are two guys that I looked at. And then again, Tom Kim, if we're just going like play the hits from 2022, 2023, like short, positional, iron fest, make a lot of putts. Feels kind of Tom Kim-esque, but it feels like a long time since he's been relevant in the golf tournament. So I hesitant to be too high on him on a given week. But yeah, that's what I've got. I mean, this range I think is quite. I think this is the first range where I start to really see the drastic dip in quality. So I don't know if you agree or not, but
yeah, I'm with you, and that's why almost like when I went through this range, I'm like, well, I probably would just take some guys a little bit deeper if I was going to do that, just because you're getting more value on people that maybe have a similar chance to win, or you're going to be asking for a lot for them to win this week.
Yeah. I mean, to your point, we go to like into the next range. You get like Ventura, Svensson. I think Kevin Yu is maybe a little underpriced just based on the macro profile. Doug Gims played well here through the years. Eric Kolos and Eckroat, all 80 to 1 or above. Like, I don't really see a lot of differences, and I frankly like a lot of these guys better than some of the guys we just listed from 60 to 70 to 1. So yeah, definitely can see your point, just kind of skipping this range altogether and going straight for longer shots. I'll kind of open the floor to you. Is there anyone? I know you've made one more click, right? Because you have Berger and Meisner already locked in. You mentioned me earlier. You have 3 clicks, so kind of who's your
he was a little deeper, but I guess we'll just open it up and start firing now with this range. Yeah. I took Luke Clinton. He was 125 when I took him. He seems to be a little bit more popular than I expected this week, which I'm sure it's not going to end well. But this is, his hometown course. He's someone. I mean, I like him a lot from like a talent standpoint. I liked him when he first came up. He's kind of going through a bit of a regression since then, but he's hitting it better now. On approach, his last few starts, he went through kind of a period toward the end of last year where he didn't hit his irons particularly well, but he's shown a little bit of life in that since the fall and then the start of this year. He's just been so bad putting, but which should set up great for a contest that depends on putting. But he is back in Florida. He's a Florida guy. Maybe this surface is going to help him swing things around. He played pretty well here last year. I think he was 18th. So I think the upside's there. I mean, he was at a deep enough number where I figured I'd take a chance. But he seems to be a little bit more popular than I expected. So I don't know if kind of there's going to be a group win on Luke Clinton in triple digits, but I think it's worth, if anything this far down the board, if there's a little bit of reasoning, why not,
It's going to be a hope and a prayer this far down the board anyway. So a guy that was, a year ago, probably 35, 40 to 1 in this field, so you play that and you look for any kind of life you can, especially with a talent like Clanton. So yeah, I don't hate that at all. The 125s are still, I think, really interesting to me. I'm going to bring up a guy that you tend to bring up a lot. Another Florida guy. I'm going to go Billy Horschel. I think I see 85 to 1 is the best I see on Horschel. Actually 94 on DraftKings, which I might actually make some moves to grab that number. But a guy, again, Florida, Bermuda grass. We know he's like, his off the tee game has not been great, but historically he's been very, very good driving the ball on this layout. The thing with Billy as well that kind of caught my eye, last 12 months, we've talked about like middle iron splits, and Horschel not usually known as like a particularly good iron player, at least week over week, but from this range of 150 to 200, 89th percentile stroke game per shot, 91st percentile good shot percentage, 7.7% of those approach shots have ended up inside 8 feet for Horschel over the last 12 months, over a pretty large sample, 234 shots. And he's gained nearly or over 400ths of a shot per round, which again is an 89th percentile. That ranks him right between the likes of a Tommy Fleetwood and an Aaron Rye. So he's kind of, and Akshay Bhatia, some other kind of notable names in that mix. So I think kind of surprising to me because Horschel's not a guy I tend to or I expect to see like at the top of like, my long-term approach baselines, but it seems like I know you've liked him over the course of the early season swing, and again, Bermuda grass putting, positional driving. If the iron play is sticky at all, he's a guy that, again, kind of like Brooks, where if he's in the mix, I actually like really trust Billy in contention. I think he's a guy that can go out there and certainly win this event. So there's no doubt the upside. He's come inside the top 9 and 3 starts since 2016. Also has a couple top 25s in there as well. So he does like this layout, and I think the number's gone maybe a bit too far for old Billy. So that's a name that definitely stuck out to me.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I mean, I thought about him. I think I'd take him here a good bit.
Probably the best we've gotten on him too.
Yeah, no, he is a Florida guy. The number is great. It's odd because he went into this year 2026 with some momentum. I thought he played pretty well to close out 2025, and then the results just haven't really been there for him this year. I kind of liked him a lot at the Sony, which was a little bit of a similar profile course to what we're seeing this week, but he made the cut, and then I think he was last of the guys who made it in that event. But he does make a lot of sense here. If he could, it's just the last, I guess. Well, he was actually all right at the MX too. It's just really the last 3 weeks haven't been very good for him.
But you're relying a lot on the Florida narrative, I think. Just home cooking. Hopefully Billy can.
But he is one of those guys too that kind of heats up with the putter. So like if he starts getting going and he's making putts early, I feel like he gains momentum pretty quickly, and especially kind of down in Florida. I mean it's interesting. It's
yeah, he came T4 at Valspar as well last year, so that was his best result actually of the season. He did have a top floor result, and yeah, I mean the thesis with Billy is like I didn't really expect him to play well on the West Coast. We talked about him a fair bit from like Sony to Amex, which I kind of agreed with you on those two events, but especially like a Farmers, Scottsdale, Pebble Beach, I didn't really expect to see Billy top on those leaderboards, especially in like signature events like Pebble. So weak field, proven pedigree. I mean, he's an 8-time winner on the PGA Tour, twice on the DP World Tour, so 10-time winner overall. You just kind of have to trust that. And sure, like similar to like Brooks and Will, like the floor is probably lower than maybe some guys in this range. But if you're just talking like guys I actually trust to win, Horschel's probably the top of that list in terms of like guys above 80-1. I'll talk about David Ford as well. Who I think, again, if we're talking about like Luke Clanton and Johnny Kiefer and some of these like top talents coming out onto the tour in 2026, Ford was very much that guy. He was the third guy ever after Ludwig and Thorbjornsen to be kind of that number 1 PGA Tour University ranking, graduated from UNC, set all kinds of records as a Tar Heel. Comes on the tour, has a pretty rough start to 2025 when he first turned pro after college. But he does have he did present like one really transferable skill, which is his driving. He's actually number 1 on the PGA Tour so far this season in driving and total driving, and he led the tour last season in driving accuracy, albeit in a limited sample. So he's super reliable off the tee, and so far in 2026, his iron play has really improved. He has gained nearly 0.8 of a stroke per round with his irons over 4 starts. That ranks right between Hideki Matsuyama and Victor Hovland in that stretch, and he looks even better when you count for the key approach range that we talked about from 150 to 200. We talked about Aaron Rye being at the top of that list since the start of 2026 in terms of strokes gained per shot from 150 to 200. It was Aaron Rye, Siwoo Kim. Number 3 is David Ford, who's gained over 1/10 of a shot per stroke. That's 99th percentile, 98th percentile in proximity, 94th percentile GIR percentage, 92nd percentile in poor shot avoidance. So the irons seem to be really firing for Ford. He's a Southeastern guy, grew up in Georgia, went to UNC. So I think the Bermuda grass is going to suit him perhaps better than we saw on the West Coast. And again, he's already kind of mixed. He finished, I think, T3 at the Bank of Utah Championship at the swing season. So he has kind of gotten a little taste of contention. He finished 13th in the Amex in a pretty similar strength field. So, yeah, I think over 100 to 1, David Ford, when a guy has this much amateur pedigree and he's starting to translate some skills slowly but surely to the PGA Tour, we know the driving is a metronomic skill, and now the approach play is coming through. I think Ford makes for a nice little long shot bet at 100 to 1 plus. So that's my take there.
Yeah, I don't hate that. I think you made a lot of good points, and yeah, I mean, this far down the board, I feel like if you have any kind, yeah, I mean, wow, he is really hitting well on approach.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you have any kind of really conviction about guys, sort of why not? Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, and that's kind of, I think that's going to end up being kind of my strategy this week. Like, we talked through a lot of the guys underneath 40 to 1, and I might get to Berger, I might get to Koepka. I'm probably going to bet Rye, but I think the crux of my card is going to be kind of taking shots down this board, because I just don't see, like, you just boil this down to like a math equation where Ryan Gerard's 18 to 1 and David Ford's 115 to 1. Like, I don't really see Gerard having 10 times the chance to win. Or not to pick on Gerard, but really anyone at the top to have like a 8 times better chance to win some of these long shots that we've been talking about. So, yeah, might be a kind of a long shot centric kind of card for me, and try to, bank on the upside of one of these young kids coming up.
Yeah, I don't hate that strategy. There was kind of one other guy I was considering down here.
Yeah.
I kind of land his way a little bit more than I would like to, but Sam Ryder, he's in triple digits. His last 3 events that he's played on the PGA Tour, he's hit it really well on approach, and he's also putted really well, which is the 2 things that we kind of stated in the opening that we were looking for. He's got 2 top 10 finishes, I believe, at this event before in the past. So he's kind of checking a lot of boxes. This far down the board, he's over 100 to 1. He kind of piqued my interest a little bit.
I don't mind that at all. Yeah, I think Ryder makes a lot of sense. 100. What's the best number I can find on a Ryder? 125. So yeah, right there in that range with Ford and Clanton. Yeah, the only thing is with Ryder, like, I kind of prefer to lean like the untapped upside, and this is a guy that's like 36. He's been on tour for a long time and hasn't quite gotten it done. But
yeah,
I think statistically, like, it fits. Like, the shoe fits statistically. It's just if I'm gonna kind of nitpick it a bit, it would just be, he's had chances to get it done and hasn't really ever done it on this stage. But
yeah, I think that's the fair critique. And there's been multiple times where I've seen him kind of in the mix and just collapse.
But I will say he's a Florida guy. He went to Stetson, which is outside Orlando. And like, when I think of like the times I've like saw Sam Ryder contention, it's like RSM Classic, Bermuda Championship, Honda Classic. It's these type of golf courses. So if there's ever time to take a shot, I think Ryder, this is certainly the spot. So not like knocking it whatsoever. I think it makes a lot more sense as some of the arguments I've made, like in 70, 60 or 70 to 1. So yeah, certainly got to add to the short list. All right, let's see here. I think I'll just kind of run through my thoughts. Kanaya, I thought made some sense to me. The iron play is abysmal, but there are 2 things he does really well, which is drive the ball straight and putt. So we saw him kind of pop up a few times in the fall swing. I think this is kind of, again, 130 to 1. You can make the case there. The early season hasn't been great in 2026, but maybe you write off 2-3 bad starts, and if he gets back to the putting form he was in last fall, that certainly makes a lot of sense. Blades Brown, anyone? I'm surprised he hasn't come up yet. 18-year-old kid, of course. Last time we saw him on the tour, he was in the final group with Scotty Scheffler and finished top 25 at the Star Golf Championship, his last start in the Korn Ferry. So playing some pretty consistent golf. Like, Blades is accurate off the tee. Obviously, we don't have a great sample, but a guy that was like, legit setting records as a junior golfer. So if you're interested in like the untapped upside and the amateur pedigree, I think you could do a lot worse than Blades in the triple digits. And then my last one would be Phillips. Carl Phillips, another guy I have a lot of respect for in terms of his pedigree in the amateur game. Already won, of course, last year on the PGA Tour in Puerto Rico, and has a really, really high ceiling with a putter. He's He rates out like not as the most consistent guy, but has plenty of spike weeks that I think can lead to winning. And another guy that rated up better than I kind of expected, and a lot of the mid iron long term splits of the mid iron in hand, 96 percentile strokes gained per shot, 97 percentile strokes. Good shot percentage, right ahead of guys like Berger, Straka, Cantley, Glover, long term over the last 12 months. So, again, Phillips, I think 150-1, I think is the best you can find on him. He would be a guy that has some past pedigree on the PGA Tour, has won before, does pop in a few of my kind of key metrics. So, Kanaya, Phillips, and Blades Brown were the last three I really care to talk about. Oh, and Lee Hodges too, who I think like past three of Open Champion, he's finished top 10 here 2 of the last 3 years, I'm pretty sure. Mid irons, putting. But yeah, again, not like a crazy nuanced argument, but those are guys that still got to me kind of past 100-1.
Yeah, no, I think they're all pretty fair. And Blades Brown's definitely an interesting one because when he was making that run at the Amex, everyone loved him, was talking about how good he was, and now it seems like in a pretty wide open event, no one's talking about him this far down the board.
Yeah, to be fair, I think he was probably like 500-1 that week.
Yeah, he was way deeper.
Books have certainly caught up a bit to it. Albeit this is a much weaker field, but that would be kind of maybe some of the reason why he's not as popular, just because he's kind of priced with like legit golfers now, as opposed to maybe a few weeks ago at Amex. But yeah, that's again if we just want to talk about random long shots, we can go all day. But of course, we got to get off air. Spencer and Joel are coming on for Freaking in the Draft, so definitely looking forward to tuning into that. They go on every single Tuesday night at 9 Eastern. So those y'all watching us, we typically go on Monday, but definitely make sure to tune into their show. Of course, it's more DFS focused, but certainly Spencer and Joel, 2 of the best in the business. They always have great guests on. So yeah, definitely be sure to catch that. Matt, I'll kind of give you the floor for the last kind of couple minutes here. If there's anyone else you want to talk about, if you just want to go for some bets and just maybe some decision points you still haven't reached yet with the Cognizant Classic card.
Yeah, I don't have a ton more to touch on. I think we talked about all the guys that I kind of had in mind. I think you brought up a lot of interesting points that I'm going to have some decisions to make on the card. I think at this point I have Berger, Meisner, and Clanton locked in. I think I'm probably going to take Ryder because why not at 125? And then there's going to be some decision making. I think the more we talk about Brooks, I don't know if I'll be able to avoid that one. But I think you did bring up, some pretty good points on Billy Horschel in particular. I mean, that far down the board. You don't have to twist my arm too hard to get me to hop on that one. And I mean, I think you made a compelling point on like a guy like Zalatoris as well, where he's just kind of not really being talked about, but obviously has that extreme upside. And so I think I've a lot to think about.
Lot of ball strikers in our conversations, so I can't wait for let's see, who's a guy that's like who's just going to gain 12 strokes putting and win this event.
Yeah,
Hughes just chips in every other hole and holds every 30-footer. He looks at all.
Oh, I did have one more guy actually I wanted to ask you about. I don't think I'm going to get there with him, but Austin Smotherman. Do you have any thoughts on him? He's hitting it really well on approach. I've liked him when he was on the PGA Tour during his first stint. He's kind of a good ball striker, but his putting is leaves a lot to be desired. Yeah.
Yeah, this is. I mean, that's the Smotherman profile we've known since. I mean, he was on tour 2023.
He's easy to root for. I like him, but he is a problem with putting.
He had a really good year on the Corn Ferry last year. Won twice, a couple top 10s in there as well. So coming out this year, firing 8th at the American Express. I can get behind it. He's probably 200-1 on odds boards.
He's definitely over 100. I got to see.
175.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how many team no put guys I can stomach. That's gonna be the crucial thing for me is like figuring out if I'm actually gonna bet a guy that can putt this week.
Yeah. We spent so much time talking about how important putting was. I got to bet a bunch of guys that can't putt.
Yeah. They come on here and be like, oh man, if Frico Hoey would have gained would have just put a field average, he'd have been right there. Oh God. Anyway, yeah, we're delusional. We appreciate you guys all tuning in. Of course, King of the Draft coming up in 25 minutes, top of the hour. So be sure to tune into there, and we will be back on Monday. I can assure you next week because this was just a bit of a weird week for me with travel. So we'll be back with you next Monday. Bay Hill, one of our favorite strengths of the schedule. Hopefully coming into that week with something to talk about, some extra money in our pocket.